Okay, and we're on. What's going on, YouTube? It's your boy, Brother Prophet. I'm with Jessica Christine Shannon once again. Today we will be discussing the origins of black inner city peer culture and the effects it has had on black people and the rest of the United States. So go ahead and start it off, Jessica. What is your opinion on it, on black inner city peer culture, and what do you think the origins are?
Well, I'm going to refer back to a question I answered way back last year that was regarding racial IQ differences. And one point that I had addressed that often is brought up by racialists is differences in student performance between black children and white children and what the source of that could be. And I had demonstrated why it's not necessarily anything related to IQ at all, which may sound strange at first, but I'll get to that in a second. Now, what I describe as inversive peer culture, I think it's an I wouldn't say an anti-educational mindset as much as in being adverse to education and things related to the white establishment. And it's a form of rebellion against negative experiences that many black children have had while in the public school systems, especially in inner city schools. And what we see happening here is a rejection of all things that could possibly be associated with or conceived as white or relating to whiteness and what white people expect from black people. And so
Yeah, I'm still
I
here.
I I talked about this study, which was it was known as the Abacadarian study, and it was one of those intervention studies done with young infants in an attempt to close a social gap. In this in this relating to what I'm talking to, it was mostly about IQ, but it ended up affecting student performance as well. It started earlier and lasted longer than a lot of other interventions like Head Start. So the gains actually did last. They gained 5 IQ points that lasted far into their 30s and never faded. These children who were part of the study, they a higher percentage of them graduated, a lower percentage of them were homeless or on welfare, a higher percentage of them went to college. Overall, they just did better than the control group, which was pretty much a statistic. And what we saw here was a shift in parenting because this intervention worked very closely with parents, which is something not a lot of them do. And so I believe these children were in a way isolated from many of the factors that would otherwise have dragged them down with the children in the control group.
Oh, okay. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I forgot what this theory is called, but I know a guy mentioned it to me. Basically, this theory states that people within a country, they generally live up to the expectations and the standards that that particular society has placed on them. For instance, hypothetically speaking, if society says that blondes are dumb, then a lot of blondes will act dumb. If someone sits here and says, for instance, that black people are good at sports, a lot of the black people will basically focus more on entering into athletics. Do you agree with
Yeah.
that?
Yes, I do. I do think that in a way people especially minorities living in a racist white supremacist society, they're quite eager to take any positive attributes they can get. So if there's a positive stereotype about black people being athletic, then that's going to be readily embraced. Or if there's a positive stereotype about Asians being smart, that's going to be readily embraced by the Asian community as a whole. Although there are some people that are more woke, so to speak, that realize the damages of even positive stereotypes.
Hmm.
But yes, I do believe that positive stereotypes play a role in the amount of black children who feel that sports and entertainment are their only pathways out of poverty.
Yeah, okay. And do you now I know a lot of people have brought this up, especially a lot of black people or minorities, if you will, who are on the right side of the spectrum. They have said that when it pertains to black culture, African American culture, they say that a lot of kids don't perform well within these inner cities due to the fact that they would be classified as I don't know, being white. Now, me personally, I went to an inner city high school, went to an inner city public school, inner city middle school, and inner city elementary school. And although I have heard this, I'm gonna be honest with you, it wasn't as widespread as many people make it out to be. Based off your own personal experiences, do you think that that is true, or do you think that is just more of a hasty generalization or a nasty stereotype that a lot of successful black people use to basically, how can I say,
Make themselves
downfall?
feel better.
Yeah, yeah,
I think that to a degree it is true, but it may more be that they feel pressure to fit in than people are actually pressuring them to fit in. They might be feeling bad about themselves.
yeah. Okay, okay. And
And
do
I was actually a homeschooled child, but as a result of that, I was sort of raised in a vacuum, far away from these black cultural elements and stereotypes and things that most black children experience in the public school system. But whenever I did encounter other children who went into who were in the public school system, other black children, I can remember always feeling alienated from them, and I was accused on multiple occasions of trying to be white.
sorry, sorry that you had to, yeah, sorry that you had to go through that. But I do, something I will say that I do believe that as a community, even though I will say that towards the end of the day, the media, which is mostly controlled by whites, play a significant role in it. But I do believe that, like within our community, specifically in the inner city, I do believe that we have kind of played into this whole, if you don't follow the status quo, or if you don't share the general opinion of all black American people, well, you're basically like not black. Like, for instance, like if you're a black conservative or a black libertarian, I mean, you're still a black person. You
Yeah.
understand what I'm saying? I mean, if you like country, rock and roll, and those types of things, you're still a black person.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel that I will say that I feel that we really have to start changing our definition on really what blackness is, because personally,
Expanding what blackness is to
yeah,
include
expanding what,
multifaceted
yeah. I mean,
parts of the experience.
because in my personal opinion, people look at me kind of weird for saying this, but I don't really believe that there is such thing really as African American culture. I mean, yeah, when you talk about things like hip hop, those things, I guess you could say, yeah, black people created hip hop, the blues, and everything like that. But when you talk about things like cultural norms, marriage, education, and those types of things, I mean,
Mhm.
I don't really feel that exists
Yeah,
because our,
it's not
yeah,
something that unites necessarily all black people, I don't think. I think that it's actually a dangerous notion in a way to try and package those things as an African American culture when really, because it divides black Americans from the rest of America. And what African American culture really is a subset of American culture.
yeah, good, good. That's a really, really good point.
It's not separated from general American culture. It's not existing in its own vacuum. It's very much a part of American culture and has many things in common with general American culture.
I mean, because I mean, what is I think is like when you include race and gender. I mean, I know there's a stereotype out there that like black people don't invest in education, but when you include race and gender, I mean, African American women, they're the most educated groups in America.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah, and
And what really illustrates my point, I think, is when foreign black people immigrate to America and find that they don't actually have much in common with black Americans.
Yeah, but you want to know something, and you know something. I was going to do a long rant on on something regarding the tension between African immigrants and African Americans. I didn't do that rant because I felt it would have been, I don't know, kind of politically incorrect. But I mean, I'm kind of getting sick and tired of other immigrant groups, in my personal opinion, trying to like compare our, compare themselves to us, because it's just two totally different struggles and two totally different histories. I mean, if anybody does their research on the immigration programs in this country, I mean, hell, for you to even come over to this country, you have to show that you have the skills. You have to show that you even have enough money to take care of yourself. I mean,
Mm.
when we talk about these African immigrants like the Nigerians, the Kenyans, the Ghanaians, I mean, these are the cream of the crop over in their own country. So how can you sit here and compare an elite privileged group from another country to an impoverished group in America, as in African Americans? So I feel that we kind of people do us an injustice, and we do ourselves an injustice when we compare ourselves to these other groups. Wouldn't you agree, or do you?
Yeah, I do agree. I think this perhaps this idea that African immigrants feel in a way superior to Native Black Americans, I think that there's some truth to it, and I think that perhaps it stems from a desire to be separated from what they see the Native Blacks experiencing. They want to be
Accept it?
upheld as something different. Yeah, upheld as something different by the white majority.
Yeah, I mean, because yeah, I mean that's why I tell people, like, I mean that's why I tell people they have to read and they have to do their studies,
Yeah, so
because
there is this encouragement of the fetishization of Africanness and what it means to be African as separate from Black American.
yeah, and I'm gonna be honest with you, like I know a lot of people disagree with me on this too, but when people say like call African American, I mean, yeah, I mean black people here are descendants of slaves who came from Africa, but to be honest with you, I've never been to Africa, and I don't consider myself African, and African isn't a race.
Yeah, and you can even see this. You can even see this fetishization happening in different industries, like the entertainment industry or the modeling industry. There's the majority of Black female models that have experienced success are Black female models who are straight from Africa. And if you really ask yourself if a Black American woman who looked like, for example, Lupita Nyong'o would experience her success, I think the answer is no.
And why do you think she wouldn't experience that success?
I think that there is an exoticism to her, and white America's fascination with her plays a role in the amount of success that she's experienced. Not that she's not talented or beautiful or amazing. I'm a big fan of hers, but I cannot personally see in this day and age a Black American woman with her appearance and skin tone having the same degree of praise and adoration by the masses.
And I absolutely agree with you. Like, I mean, like when you have a discussion with a lot of white people who are skeptical to racial prejudice, white privilege, or racism, they usually sit here and say things like, "Well, like a white woman told me, well, look at Beyonce and Halle Berry." I looked at her and I said,
Yeah,
"They're mixed." You can't. I mean, I'm not, and I'm not trying to get into the whole discussion on if mixed people are black or not, but those are they're not sub-Saharan African women. Those are women who have a lot of different ancestry, who have stereotypical European features. So it's much easier for them to assimilate and be considered just as beautiful as a white woman than a dark skinned woman who has kinkier hair and more broader features.
yeah, and I wouldn't even say necessarily that they're considered as beautiful as a white woman because if you look at pictures of them over the years, they have changed their features to further assimilate into
Hmm.
European beauty standards than before. And I actually don't think that Beyonce has white features at all, aside from perhaps her lighter skin tone. But and you honestly, I've witnessed a lot of disdain towards Beyonce as a person coming from the white community. Like there are a lot of people who say will speak about her as if she is not accomplished anything great, which, even if you don't like her, is to me intellectually dishonest.
Yeah, she put a target on her back when she did that. I think it was that Black Panther performance
Yeah,
at the Super Bowl. And yeah, I agree with you. I'm sorry, I don't believe that there's such thing as white or black features. Because if we were to go over to Africa right now, I mean, you look at an Ethiopian, a Somalian. I mean, they're darker than me, as sometimes as dark as the night, and they have straight nose, straight curly hair, and pointy lips. So I don't really believe in that whole black feature, white feature thing.
yeah. I get accused a lot of being a biracial or mixed person, even though it's not true, not recent ancestry, that is. But, and I have a mother who, she gets asked if she's Filipino a lot, and I think that that's not proof that she doesn't have black features. I think it's proof that there's no such thing as features that can be assigned only to one race.
No, and I absolutely agree with you. Now, I wanted to ask you something regarding like education, since it correlates well with what we're talking about in regards to culture. Do you think, like, I hear a lot of people say that education is the only way that Black Americans can rise to the top and be more socially accepted in these types of things. Do you personally believe that's true? Because I look at it from this standpoint personally. I'm not saying that I'm a separationist or anything like that. I'm not fully anti-integration or anything like that, but I look at it like this. Black women, like I said, are the most educated group in America, and this they have the highest rate of MBAs, second highest PhDs, but yet when you compare them to white women, they still make less. They still have double the unemployment rates, and they are still locked out of some of those opportunities that white women are. They just did a study recently that said that even black boys who grow up in well-educated families who receive an education still have a much higher chance of falling into poverty than a white kid that grows up in a traditional middle class family. So do you feel that it's time for us to kind of move away from that education and getting a career is the only way for black people to make it, or do you feel that we should just keep on that path and hope for the best?
Well, first of all, I do feel that it's unfair for people to expect black people in mass numbers to move in that direction, considering the state of our public education system, especially for poor, underprivileged communities. And I do think that this rigid belief that traditional education is the only way to financial success needs to go, not just for the black community, but I think that's a belief held by a lot of minority communities, whereas in the white community, there's a lot more flexibility encouraged. People are encouraged to go be entrepreneurs and take risks and things like that. But you can't really blame minority communities for not feeling the same way because, again, white privilege benefits those people. But I do feel that rather than necessarily traditional means of employment, I think that entrepreneurship and business owning should be encouraged alongside that.
Yeah. Well, yeah. That's to say. I know Dr. Boyce Watkins and Dr. Claude Anderson have um have mentioned group economics and entrepreneurship being the forefront and the blueprint that Black Americans should follow. Now that leads me to another question, because me and a group of guys had this discussion the other day. Do you feel that with the current state of the way Black Americans are, because we're very, very individualistic, we have adopted
Yeah.
individualism more so than anything. Do you personally feel that that is possible to do?
Um, the way things are now, I think maybe more than before, than maybe more than the past decade, but not more than pre-integration.
Hmm. Hmm.
Like you see a lot of these messages being passed around in black pop culture and black music, which is a positive change. Like Jay-Z's recent album, he discussed financial liberty, and that reached a lot of people, and I thought that was a nice thing to happen. But on a wide scale,
Yeah.
we still have a long way to go, I think, as far as spreading those ideas and interlinking the community on this issue.
Yeah, and I absolutely agree with you. Me personally, people say that I'm a little too pessimistic. But I tell people with as much as many conflicting views we have within the African American community, to be honest with you, I don't see that. I personally don't see that happening in a very, 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 very long time.
Yeah, maybe not necessarily, you know. I feel like as far as racism, the black community is definitely united on that in general, but on anything else, I don't really see the same sense of unity.
Yeah, I agree with you. And pulling back to like black inner city culture and the origins of black inner city culture, you have a lot of black men who say that the women within the community has played a significant role in that, because like a lot of black men who have gone out of their community and who have decided to like integrate with other groups of women have stated that, you know, when they were in school, the black women chose the thugs. They didn't really look at them because they were too nerdy, whereas when they went into another community, they were much more accepted due to who they were. Do you feel that women, like black women, have played a significant role in in promoting this black inner city culture thing by putting certain, like putting and thugs and gangsters and people like that, dysfunctional men, on a pedestal?
Um, I think that the reverse could be said as well, you know,
Hmm.
of women who behave in a way that you could perceive or judge as ghetto or excuse me, a thought like being upheld over maybe a different kind of woman, but I don't think that has as big of an influence as negative experiences in public school do on shaping the way black children interact with their environment and each other.
I absolutely agreed with you. That's why I disagree. That's why I mean, in that hangout, I particularly disagreed with the guy. I feel that we tend to do a lot of finger pointing towards one another, but towards the
Yeah,
end of the
there's a
day,
sense of divisiveness there.
yeah, I mean, like, but towards the end of the day, it all comes back. It all comes back to the system. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that there isn't no some type of gender war going on for black men or women or anything like that, but that's for a totally different video. But I mean, even when you want to speak on something like that, I mean, you have to go back and look at the way the system is set up. And a lot of people do not want to sit here and admit this, but there is indeed some type of there is a racial hierarchy of preference that is set up in this country.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, I tell people, so when people sit here and make these comments about, oh, if black men got an education, oh, if black men did this, oh, if black men did that, you're still going to be put at a very, very huge disadvantage, because it hurts me to say this. They black in a lot of people's eyes, a black man who has a PhD is still nothing but a nigga. Hurtful
Yeah,
to say that.
yeah, but it's the truth. Like for instance, not too long ago there was a case where a black professor was stopped by the police.
Oh yeah, and did you hear about the case where the two black guys got arrested
Yeah,
at
Starbucks.
Starbucks?
Yeah, I
And
just read about this morning actually.
yeah, and the crazy thing about it is these guys were there, to, I believe, to meet with an investment banker for a business deal.
And they were just waiting for someone and were arrested for that, which is crazy because I see people wait around in restaurants for something all the time, or even sit down and do their work there. So that's why it was just insane to me that that would happen, but not surprising, unfortunately.
Yeah, I don't know. It's been a lot of crazy things that have gone on over the past week. Like there was a black kid in Michigan who was shot at just for asking for directions.
Yeah,
It's
I
yeah,
read about
it's
that too.
yeah, it's just been absolutely crazy. But what do you think when it comes to like inner city culture, since we're specifically talking about inner city culture, what are some things that could be done in your opinion to change that? Or is there a way to change that type of culture?
Um, I think first of all that it won't be easy, and it definitely can't be something that comes from the white educational establishment. Although there may be, well-meaning individuals there, it will not be something that comes from them.
Mhm. Mhm.
And
And I
I don't
mhm.
think it will come from traditional respectability politics either. I feel like by the youth today, respectability politics is more despised than ever. I think that repackaging financial literacy and educational and literary empowerment is what's needed. Repackaging it for a new generation, a new a new youth, a new phase of the black community.
Do you think that possibly I know Bernie Sanders was promoting this very, very heavy on his campaign trail. Do you think that making college or free or subsidized would help?
Yes, I do. I think that would help everyone actually for the whole country.
Yeah, yeah. And when you talk about respectability of politics, you're talking about like young, like young people, just like black people generally not respecting politics or becoming educated of politics.
Respectability politics refers to the I think the tendency of black elders to scold black youths for not assimilating enough into what's acceptable in general America.
And how are you going to assimilate into a society that doesn't like you?
Yeah, like an example of respectability politics, I would say, is telling black youths that if they dressed a certain way or talked a certain way, or if they liked certain music over other types of music, then that would help when it doesn't.
Yeah, yeah.
So
That
it's
it links.
definitely not
Yeah,
going to be achieved by policing black youth.
yeah. Like I say, like people say, well, if black, yeah, like if black people pulled their pants up, if they did this and that, did this and that, things would be different. I hear that you want to know something that's crazy. Are you a millennial or are you Generation Z?
Generation Z.
Yeah, you're in the same boat as my sister. She's just 2 years older than you, though. Yeah, like there was what was it called? What was it called? Yeah, there was yeah, I hear that a lot from boomers actually. Like there's a
Yeah,
lot of black baby boomers, even though coincidentally the boomers as a whole, they're the ones who pretty much so screwed our generation. But that's another topic for another day. And I had to bring this up to this guy one day that look, when you're back in your guys' day, you guys had immigration, but you guys had to really worry about just competing with white people. In our generation, we're not just competing with white people, we're competing with immigrants, whether that's Chinese, Koreans, Indians, Hispanics. And these group of people, whether people want to accept it or not, are placed much higher on the racial hierarchy list than black people. So
yeah,
just,
and
yeah.
I think I hear a lot of discussion about that. Like my mom, for example, once like she usually attributes it to superficial characteristics like having straight hair or lighter skin, but I think it has more to do with the willingness of those communities to assimilate into white culture.
Yeah, because I had a discussion with a Korean guy one day, and he said that and he was one of those types of guys where he didn't believe in the whole model minority myth and everything like that. Because even he told me, he said, you go back to my home country. He said that you have a lot of poor people, you have people working retail jobs, but not all of us. He said not all of us are entrepreneurs and doctors. But
Yeah,
even
exactly. And that's actually a type of racism that affects Asian Americans heavily because they are generalized as all being part of this ultra successful group, which often erases the diversity of their community and the countries that they come from and what they experience here.
Yeah, and he was telling me, he said, whether you believe it or not, he said a lot of Asian Americans, he said the reason why a lot of them are accepted more so by white people is because they've played into the belief that they are better than other minorities.
Yeah.
Yes, and so Dave, I'd say Dave was similar. I would say the educated ones, especially the Chinese, Koreans, and the Japanese, they've been able to assimilate pretty well because of their perception and due to the fact that the majority of their descendants who came over here since 1965, I mean, were educated people.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But did you want to add anything else before we wrap it up?
I did want to talk about how inner city peer culture relates to something I discussed previously, the synaptic pruning process and the loss of brain power, to put it roughly, loss of
Hmm.
brain power over a period of time, ending in late adolescence and starting in early adolescence. I would say that that's driven directly by this peer culture that I refer to, because as heritability lowers and children integrate more with public school environment and are influenced greater and greater by their peers, we see this drop off happening, and it's directly correlated with what I talked about last time and what we talked about today.
Okay, could you explain that a little further if you can?
Like, for example, when you see the drop off happening in early adolescence, that's when the transition from elementary school to middle school and to high school and forward is occurring. And that's when peers are playing a bigger role in a child's life than their home life and their parents. So even if their parents have instilled certain qualities in them, it may not be enough because the peers have a greater influence. What they experience at school for such and such hours a day is going to have the most influence on their outlook.
Yeah, that makes sense because there's a saying out there that goes that yeah, it all starts at home, but your peers actually can play just as much, if not a bigger part in your life.
Yeah,
Yeah, because I actually knew a guy who actually in high school who had his head on straight, came from a pretty intact family that loved them dearly, but he started, associating with the wrong people, and he ended up basically getting 100 years for being involved in a murder.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I say that you've touched on a lot of things that a lot of people are uncomfortable to touch on. I really appreciate that. Did you want to have anything else that you would like to add?
Only that I would love to come on here again and perhaps next time discuss stereotypes about black violence and inherent propensity to violence and that whole argument, just address those things and sort of do a takedown of those theories.
Oh, absolutely. Actually, we could actually send me a message. We can set that up for any time this week.
All
Anytime.
right,
All
that's
right.
great.
All right. It was good talking to you, Jessica. You have yourself a good day.
You too. Bye bye.
Bye.